Have you ever caught yourself wishing you could disappear, not die, just vanish for a while, like you were never here, like the noise of the world could no longer find you? If that thought has ever crossed your mind, here's what nobody talks about. The desire to disappear is rarely about wanting to end life. It's about wanting to end the version of you that the world keeps pulling from. You might look normal from the outside. You reply, you show up, you scroll, you laugh at the right moments. But inside, there's a quiet exhaustion, a feeling that being seen costs too much, that existing feels like performance, that if you could just step out of the frame, even briefly, your nervous system could finally breathe. We usually label this feeling as weakness, laziness, or sadness. But this is where it gets interesting. Wanting to disappear is often not a lack of strength. It is a sign of a system that has been strong for too long. And neuroscience shows that the brain is not designed for endless social exposure. Every interaction, every expectation, every unspoken rule activates networks responsible for threat detection, self-monitoring, and emotional regulation. When these networks stay switched on for extended periods, the brain begins to look for the fastest form of relief. Not pleasure, not success, silence, absence, invisibility. In people who frequently want to disappear, certain circuits are especially sensitive. The anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors social pain and internal conflict, tends to be more reactive. The default mode network, which generates self-reflection and identity narratives, becomes louder. You don't just experience moments. You experience yourself having moments. You watch yourself. You analyze yourself. You feel the emotional weight of being you. At the same time, stress chemistry plays a role. When cortisol remains elevated and dopamine becomes inconsistent, the brain starts associating stimulation with cost. Not excitement, cost. Even neutral attention can feel like demand. Even affection can feel like pressure. The nervous system quietly concludes that the safest state is the one where nothing is required. No expression, no response, no identity to maintain. But brain chemistry alone doesn't create the wish to disappear. There's another layer. Psychologically, people who want to disappear are often deeply perceptive. They notice tone shifts, micro-rejections, emotional undercurrents. They pick up what others miss, and they absorb it. Over time, this creates a self-concept shaped around adaptation. Being the one who understands, the one who adjusts, the one who doesn't cause friction. Here's what nobody talks about. When your identity forms around emotional management, you slowly lose a sense of emotional ownership. You become skilled at being what the moment needs, but unsure what you need. So disappearing starts to feel like the only space where nothing is demanded from you, where you are not regulating anyone, where you are not performing coherence. Internal research models in psychology often describe this as high self-referential load. The mind carries too many active representations of how it is perceived, how it affects others, how it should be. Studies repeatedly show that people who experience this state score high in empathy, introspection, and emotional complexity. They don't lack feeling. They feel too much, too accurately, too continuously. But this is where it goes deeper. For many, the desire to disappear traces back to early environments where being emotionally visible was unsafe, overwhelming, or unrewarded. Maybe attention came with unpredictability. Maybe needs were met only when they were quiet. Maybe love was inconsistent. The nervous system learned a subtle equation. Presence equals risk. Absence equals regulation. So instead of developing a strong instinct to express, the psyche developed a strong instinct to minimize, to shrink internal signals, to move out of the spotlight before the spotlight could hurt. Over time, this becomes more than a coping strategy. It becomes a philosophical position. You start to feel that the truest version of you exists only when no one is looking, that your real self lives in private moments, internal worlds, late-night thoughts, imaginary futures, half-formed identities. The outer world begins to feel like a translation that always loses something important. But this is where it gets interesting. Not everyone who wants to disappear is running from pain. Some are running toward depth. The wish to vanish can also emerge in people whose inner world is simply more vivid than the outer one, where meaning is internal, symbolic, and subtle, where silence feels nourishing, where identity is fluid, not performative. In this sense, wanting to disappear is not pathology. It is a nervous system that finds restoration in low stimulation, a mind that processes life internally before expressing it externally, a person whose psychological home is inward, and neither side is better. Some people are built to metabolize experience through interaction, others through withdrawal, some stabilize through visibility, others through retreat. The problem only arises when one mode is forced to live permanently in the other's world. Here's the personal realization hiding inside this. If you want to disappear, it doesn't mean you want to stop existing. It means the way you are existing is misaligned with how your nervous system maintains coherence. You are not craving nothingness. You are craving a state where your inner world does not have to defend itself. You might notice this when you fantasize about empty rooms, distant places, faceless lives, anonymous routines. These are not death fantasies. They are nervous system fantasies, images of low demand, low evaluation, low self-monitoring, high internal freedom. And when you understand this, something quietly shifts. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me for wanting to disappear?" the question becomes, "What part of me is overexposed?" Because the desire to vanish is often the psyche's way of saying, "I need a form of existence that doesn't require constant translation." You don't need to erase yourself. You need states where you are not being interpreted. You need moments where identity softens, where language quiets, where attention returns inward, where you are not a role, a function, a signal, or a mirror. And neuroscience shows that when the brain regularly enters these states, the same circuits that once generated withdrawal begin to generate stability. Cortisol lowers. Self-referential noise decreases. Emotional processing becomes integrated rather than defensive. The wish to disappear slowly transforms into the ability to arrive without armor. So if you've ever wanted to vanish, let this land gently. It doesn't mean you are broken. It means you are carrying more internal reality than your current life structure is allowing you to hold. And when a mind like that finally finds environments, relationships, and rhythms that don't demand contraction, something unexpected happens. The desire to disappear weakens, not because the world became louder, but because you no longer had to. And if this resonated, there's another layer worth exploring. The psychology of why some minds feel more real in solitude than in connection, and how early emotional patterns quietly shape the way you experience closeness itself. If this spoke to you, subscribe and continue with us into the deeper psychology of solitude, attachment, and the hidden patterns shaping how your mind experiences connection.